Medical school is a really tough journey, but not knowing these 5 tips is going to make it even tougher. Come with me. Let me tell you what's up.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
4 years. 4 years you're going to be spending doing this. And I feel like you need to know these 5 tips to get through medical school to make it that even better of an experience. And so you'll be happy and reach your goal of becoming a doctor. I wish I knew these things much earlier in my medical career. I was able to catch some of those things halfway, three-fourths of the way through, but I wish I knew it since day one because I feel like I would have been way, way more happier along the way of my medical school journey experience. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Number one, you got to consolidate the knowledge that you've already learned and make sure you review it repeatedly throughout your whole medical school experience. You're going to be blasted with so much information in medical school that you need to have a system in place to be able to review all the information before. In my medical school, they gave me stacks and stacks and stacks of PowerPoints, and it was not efficient of me to have to go through all those stacks of PowerPoints to review all that information when I already took the test and had to go back and review information from the past that was going to be on a future test. What I would recommend is that this is a method that I saw a lot of people using at my medical school specifically, was that whatever information that you had to know for a certain block, try to fit it all in one piece of paper front and back and put it into a binder. That way you have one piece of paper representing maybe like 6 7 weeks of a quarter, and try to use that information on that one piece of paper to review. Why is this method so effective? So, if you're able to have one piece of paper, this is going to be way less stressful to go through than having to go through every single one of those papers of that PowerPoint that was given to you at the beginning of the quarter. Plus, when you are reframing all of the information that you've learned for that test onto that one piece of paper, you're almost reviewing it and consolidating it in a way that works for you. And you can also think about it in your mind how it makes sense. That way, when you go back to that information, you're reviewing something that you already made, and it'll make it that much easier to remember that information for future tests. Also, if you're an Anki person, which I am, I also liked putting that information into flashcards and reviewing that information in a spaced repetition formula, which is something that was very effective for me. And I still use to this day, even as a doctor. And I was able to review all that information with that one piece of paper to read, and then have another medium to actually review that information with flashcards as well. Life-saving tip number two, you need to get on them questions early and often. This is something that I didn't really do until maybe my third year of medical school. And what I was actually doing was that instead of waiting until a week before the exam, or when I was studying for the exams, I would be coinciding what I was learning with questions at the same time. It's not enough to just know the information, and you need to know how they're going to ask you those questions in a question like format, because what's the point of knowing all that information if you don't know how they're going to present it on an exam? This is something that I learned the hard way when I was taking step one, is that I was trying to watch all these videos, read all this material, and I wasn't prioritizing doing enough questions earlier and often. And as a result of it, I didn't do as well on step one as I would have hoped. It feels weird to be doing questions when you're not super comfortable with the information, but I promise you, doing questions will really go a long way to making your experience taking exams that much better. And it also helps with a lot of people, including me, that have test taking anxiety. And I feel that for me, at least, when I was doing questions, and not only doing questions, but doing it on a timed mode, simulating what it's actually going to be like on exam day. I know there's a bunch of like test study modes where you're doing the question and you're spending all that time reviewing the question. Don't do that. Do it on timed mode and simulate that stress, because when you're under stress, where you start freaking out and start forgetting information, get used to feeling comfortable in a timed environment. Life saving tip number three, you guys, when you get to your clinical years, have to make yourself essential and indisposable to your team. Why is this so important? A lot of people go into their clinical rotations, and when you're a medical student, it is a very weird year because it's kind of hard to kind of figure out where your place is on the team, where you can make an impact, where you can make yourself known. And a lot of people, because they don't know how to figure that out, end up fading into the background, and you're often forgotten as to be a part of the team. What you need to be doing is making yourself known, making your name known, and really showing who you are and really advocating for yourself. Because I know a lot of people are afraid of being wrong, answering questions wrong, being pimped, and all these different things. It's way better to showcase yourself and try to answer questions and make yourself indisposable and known on your team, as opposed to just fading in the background and just kind of going with the flow. because you're not going to get letters of recommendations like that. You're not going to be remembered like that when it's time to review applicants for match day for getting into residency. You're just going to be forgotten, and it's really going to be hard for you to match into residency. I will give you guys a couple of tips in the future in terms of what you can do on your clinical rotation to make yourself indisposable and essential to your team. That way, when it comes time for match day, you're remembered and you get good valuations on your actual profile, which can really boost you up in the eyes of a lot of reviewers for application cycles. But I'll give you one tip in this video on what you can do on your team is trying to do as much you can to take a load off of your interns, your residents, and your team. People really loved being helped, and a lot of those team members, your interns, residents, there are really stressed. So whenever there's a medical student on my team and they say, hey, like, do you mind if I can call this patient for you? Do you mind if I can like go get this for you? Or all those certain things. When you're doing that, these people are remembering those things, and you really got to think you are advertising yourself as a potential coworker for these people. So nobody likes working with a coworker that is not helpful, that is not a team player. You got to be a team player. And if you are, then people are going to want to advocate for you to come to their program so you can match much, much more easier. Number four, take really big ownership of your patients when you are on your clinical rotations. A lot of times when medical students are on their clinical rotations, whether they're on their third or fourth year rotations, I'll notice a lot of people will try to say we statements instead of I statements. This is such a really small thing, but it's a really big thing if you use it the right way. I think that we should follow this plan. No, 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 no. You should say, I think this is what's going on with my patient, and I want to do this, this, and that. That is a really big difference. And that really shows that not only are you taking ownership of your patient, you are trying to be bold and put yourself out there, and you're taking the risk of being wrong. You don't learn a majority of the time when you're right. You learn a majority of the time when you're wrong. In that instance, when you're wrong, you're corrected, and you remember those instances a lot more than when you're right. Yes, this is our patient on our team, but it's your patient. You're the doctor, student doctor, but you are the first and foremost person that's going to be taking care of that patient. So you really need to take ownership. Lastly, tip number 5 for your life-saving tip: comparison is a thief of joy. Yes, a lot of people in medical school are competitive people, but do not compare yourself to your fellow medical student. You guys do not know what circumstances your co-medical student was going through to get to the point that they are now. So it's really unfair for you and for that other person for you to compare yourself to them. And if you get into the cycle of trying to compare yourself to your other medical students of saying, oh man, they got like 10%, 5%, 2% better than me, you got to take the big moments for yourself and only for yourself, even the small moments, because that person is not going to take step 1 for you. They're not going to take step 2 for you. They're not going to take any of the exams for you in the future. So do not compare yourself to them, because if you get stuck in that cycle, you're not only going to be unhappy with yourself, you're also going to end up envying other people, which is not something you want to do in your medical school career. One thing that I really hated about exams in medical school was the after effect when, one, people would try to talk after the exam and try to compare answers and say this, 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 and that. That would just psych myself out. And then two, when the exam results came up, I never shared my grade and I never asked another person's grade, because what is their grade going to do for me? I'm not going to be able to get that grade. So it's really just a waste of time. So focus on yourself, your tests, your own answers, your thought process. Your mistakes are your mistakes. And if you correct your own mistakes, you're going to grow as a part of it. So don't compare yourself to others. Comparison is a thief of joy, and that's really going to make your med school experience way, way, way more tougher if you're doing that. So those are the 5 life-saving tips that I feel that every medical student should know. Please adopt these tips for yourself. If you guys already do some of these or none of these, let me know your experience down below if you do this and how it's helped you. I'll see you guys later. Peace. Good luck with the journey, guys. Have a nice day.